Hi, my name is Kristen and this is Kristen Craves Books. So I know I'm super early with this video, but I was doing research for it and I realized that August 1st lands on a Tuesday, so that is a release day. And I wanted to give you plenty of time to get your pre-orders in. There are so many books coming out in August. I say that every month, but some of my most anticipated books of the entire year come out this month. So I just wanted to give you time to be prepared. So let's talk about them. So obviously starting with August 1st, the first one is one I have already read, and this was an ALC from Libre.fm, and sadly this is an audiobook original, not an Audible original, which is good. So I think you can access it obviously from Libre.fm, hopefully from your library as well. But because it's audiobook only, it does make it inaccessible to a lot of people because I know not everybody can listen to audiobooks or enjoys that experience. And it's even worse because it's a sequel to a beloved book. So this is The Honeymoon Crashers by Christina Lauren. It is a sequel novella to The Honeymooners, which is my favorite Christina Lauren. I have read many of them and I'm often disappointed by them. But The Honeymooners I just thought was a fun time. And I so appreciated that we got this sequel, but I'm sad that if you don't listen to audiobooks, you can't read this one. So I'm hoping like maybe even an ebook gets released in the future or something. I'll do more research to see if that's coming, and if it is, I will let you know in the description box down below, because if you love The Honeymooners, you're gonna love this. And it just makes me sad that it's not accessible for everybody, but okay, rant over. To even tell you who this book follows spoils a huge plot point from book one. But if you've read book one, you might be able to guess whose romance we're getting in book two. So that is all I will say. This is set in Hawaii. If you like romances set around wedding plannings and weddings like I do, this is a really good one. It's under 5 hours. It was just a really good time. It was nice to be back with these characters. A full cast audiobook, but again, I wish that there were other ways to access it. But I had a great time with it. Listened to it in an afternoon, and it was a blast. Then we have another romance called With Love from Cold World, and this is by Alicia Thompson, who wrote Love in the Time of Serial Killers, which I know got mixed reviews, but I really loved and related to, so I've been waiting for this one for a while. I think we got the cover reveal sometime last year, and I've been so excited for it because this cover is just so good and romantic. And this is a rivals to lovers workplace romance, and they work at a wintry themed amusement park in Orlando, Florida. So they're struggling to bring traffic to this theme park because obviously they're competing with Disney World, and who goes to Florida and wants to go to a wintry theme park. And then they're in some kind of contest to promote the theme park, and they don't get along, but they end up falling in love obviously, and it looks really cute. I love that whole premise. And I do like a workplace romance once in a while. I'm loving underwater horror lately, so this one looks like it just might fit, and this is The Narrow by Kate Alice Marshall. This is a YA horror set at a boarding school, which is a bonus, and our main character goes to this boarding school that happens to be haunted, and there is a river behind the building that looks really calm and peaceful, but everybody knows that something sinister lies underneath the surface. And anyone who's ever fallen into this river has not made it, except for one person. And our main character reconnects with the person who survived, and this person has been living in isolation and really just struggling to live, has to always have purified water and things like that. And they form a kind of bond, and our main character starts to learn what really happened in that river. So that sounds like a spooky good time to me, and I am somebody who appreciates a good YA horror. And as I said, I want all the underwater horror right now, and there are a few on this list, so that is really exciting. This next one definitely looks out of my comfort zone, but I'm always down to try a horror novella, and this is Wild Spaces by S.L. Coney, and this is cosmic horror. And cosmic horror historically has not worked for me, but I think most of the cosmic horror I've read is on the longer side, so maybe a novella version will work better for me. The dog on the cover makes me nervous. Whenever I see a dog on the cover, especially in a horror, I need to know if they live or not, so I might have to read some reviews before I pick this up, but I'm willing to try it. It is a coming-of-age story. It's following an 11-year-old boy who's living an idyllic life in South Carolina when his estranged grandfather comes to visit, and something sinister starts to happen. Things start to change, there's a lot of tension, and that is all we're given because I think it's on the shorter side, and that is all we need. So I'm curious enough to try this if I know the dog lives. That's the only thing I need to know. Next we have another book that I have an ALC from Libre.fm, and I don't know if I have time to get to it before August 1st, but I would like to try. because I've been seeing this around and it's getting really good reviews. And this is The Art of a Scandal by Regina Black, and this is following a woman named Rachel who is married to a politician, and on his 40th birthday she receives a text message from him that is obviously for another woman. And she wants to get a divorce, but he is up for re-election. He has his eyes set on the White House, and they make a deal where she will pretend that they are in a happy marriage so that when they inevitably do get divorced, she will get to keep the house and $1 million. During this time, she meets a younger man, I think he's 26 years old, named Nathan, who is an artist and kind of reinvigorates her life. And they obviously fall in love and have this passion, but she has to keep it a secret for this deal. And Nathan has secrets of his own that start to come out. So this looks really interesting. It does sound like a romance that I am going to like. I love a messy romance, and I've seen some good reviews, so hopefully I'll get to it before August 1st, but we will see. Then we have the third book in the Meant to Be series. This series I really like. These are modern day rom-coms inspired by Disney princess movies. And the first one was If the Shoe Fits, the second one was By the Book, and this third one is Kiss the Girl, and each of them are by different authors. And the newest installment is obviously inspired by The Little Mermaid, which is having a moment right now, which is exciting, and is written by Zoraida Cordova, who I adore. So I have been eagerly anticipating the release of this book. It's almost here. I've been loving this series. I just think they're a fun, good time. They are published by Disney, so they are closed-door romances, so know that going in. Don't be looking for steamy scenes in here because you're not going to find it, but they are fun if you like Disney movies. And this one has a lot of nods to Little Mermaid in the synopsis, so you should read that because it's interesting and funny. But it's following our main character, who is part of a really popular band, and it's all with her sisters, and we open up to them on their farewell tour. And she thinks that once this stage of her life is over, she can set out on her own and find what she really wants to do, but her father is pushing her to start her solo career right away. And one night, her and her sister sneak out. They go to like this dive bar where there's a band there, and she has an instant attraction to a man named Eric. And they get to talking, and he invites her to go on tour with him. And now she's torn between what is expected of her and what she really wants to do with her life. And I love the last paragraph of the synopsis. It says, caught between the world she longs for and the one she left behind, can Ariel follow her dreams, fall in love, and somehow find her own voice? So I know that's going to be good. I have read a book by this author before and have been disappointed, but I'm still hopeful about this one. This is Bring Me Your Midnight by Rachel Griffin, who wrote The Nature of Witches. This sounds really interesting. It is a fantasy romance. It is YA. It is following a character who is a witch, but she has been promised to marry somebody from the mainland to keep the relations between them and the people in her coven aligned. And there's some kind of deal where the witches always have to pour their magic into the ocean during a full moon, and I think that keeps the ocean tame, so that's why everybody is getting along at this point. And then one night she misses this ritual, and that is not good, and she meets somebody who teaches her to do some forbidden magic, and she is torn between where she wants to go in her life. So there's some potential there. We will see how I feel about that. I do like a witchy story, and this one sounds like a unique one, so I'm definitely willing to give it a try. Then we have one of my most anticipated releases of the entire year. It is Family Lore by Elizabeth Acevedo, and I'm currently a couple chapters into the e-arc that I have, so not enough to give you true thoughts, but it just feels like Elizabeth Acevedo, even though this is her adult debut. If you loved The Inheritance of Arcadia Divina by Zoraida Cordova, you're gonna like this. It's the same kind of vibe. Our main character at the beginning is somebody who is capable of predicting when somebody is going to die. They know the moment, the day that this person is going to die. She calls all of her sisters for a living wake. So her sisters are wondering, like, does she know she's going to die? What is happening here? But she never tells them what's going on. And then we also get perspectives from those three sisters and then their daughters as well. So we're following these two generations of women within the same family, 3 days leading up to this living wake. And it's just really beautifully written. If you've liked any of her YA, I think that this one is worth trying. Again, I'm only a few chapters in, but I just adore everything that she does. Moving on to August 8th, we have another horror, and this one sounds so interesting. It's called The Last One by Will Dean. This is following a woman who is on a cruise with the love of her life and having a great time. She goes to bed, wakes up the next morning, and she realizes that she is alone on the ship. Her partner is gone, all the other guests are gone, the crew is gone, it is just her. And normally I don't like survival stories, but that premise alone, being lost in the Atlantic Ocean on a cruise ship completely alone, not knowing where anybody disappeared to, is terrifying, and I am ready to give that a try. I'm somebody who really does like weird magical realism / literary fiction, and this one really does sound out there, but I'm curious about it. And this is a debut novel, and it's called Shark Heart, a love story by Emily Havoc. And this is a debut novel of marriage, motherhood, metamorphosis, and letting go. It's an intergenerational love story that begins with newlyweds Ren and her husband Lewis, a man who over the course of 9 months transforms into a great white shark. So we're following Ren as her husband is diagnosed with this disease where he's turning into a great white shark. I know that sounds odd, but just go with it. I'm sure it's a really beautiful metaphor for something. And this experience opens up a lot of repressed memories for Ren of her childhood and different relationships that she's had. And then we also follow her mother when she was pregnant with Ren and her experiences. So I think there's gonna be something kind of heartbreaking and really beautiful in here, and I think that's what magical realism can really do. So it's an interesting premise and one I definitely want to try and I'm curious about, because I've never read anything where a man becomes a great white shark, and I kind of want to. Then we have our next underwater horror, and this is Whalefall by Daniel Kraus, and this is like my biggest fear. I know people are afraid of sharks in the ocean. The thing that scares me most are whales. I don't know what it is about whales. Maybe it was Free Willy scared me as a kid. Pinocchio scared me. I don't know what it is, but I've always been fascinated by whales. I've gone whale watching, but really terrified of them as well. So this is following a man whose father died in the ocean, and he's determined to recover his dad's body. And while he's out there, he gets into some kind of tussle with a giant squid, as one does. And then a whale comes up to eat the squid, but also swallows him at the same time. And he realizes that he only has an hour of oxygen left, and he has to survive. That sounds terrifying and so good. After reading something horrifying like that, you're gonna need something light, and this book sounds perfect for that. This is The Witch is Back by Sophie H. Morgan. This is one of those witchy rom-coms that I just love. They're all kind of the same, but they all work for me and I adore it. And it's a second chance romance. I think there's a marriage of convenience in here. So this follows Emma, who owns a bar called Toil and Trouble, of course, and she's fine being alone after her ex broke her heart. But one day he walks into our bar, his name's Bastian, of course, and he wants her back. And she has a dog familiar that looks adorable, is on the cover, a best friend who wants to put a hex on him, and obviously she is brokenhearted, but there's a reason he left. There's probably going to be some miscommunication here, but I'm okay with that in these witchy rom-coms. They're just a good time for me, and I can't wait to at least give this one a shot. And then Catcher on Award has a new book coming out called Looking Glass Sound, and this is following an author named Wilder who is writing his last book, and it seems to be a blend of fiction and memoir, and it's about two childhood friends who are living in New England. And then there is a serial killer that is around. These two find a body. And then there's also somebody who stole Wilder's memoir and made it into a really popular fiction book. And as the story goes on, Wilder is starting to confuse fact with reality. And I think it's just kind of mind-bending in that way. I do think that that is an interesting premise if done well. So we will see. Moving on to August 15th. This is one I actually have an arc of. And again, I am currently reading just a few chapters in. This is The Invisible Hour by Alice Hoffman, who is an author I adore. You hear me talk about practical magic all of the time, so I was thrilled when I received this arc in the mail. I am only a chapter 2 in, but I just love Alice Hoffman's writing. And this is following our main character, who is part of a really oppressive cult. And in this cult, the outside world is dangerous. They think books are the devil. And she happens to have a copy of The Scarlet Letter, which she loves and relates to, and I think that this book gives her hope, and it's about her trying to break free from this cult. And honestly, that is all I know about it so far and all I need to know. It's interesting to see that Alice Hoffman is writing about a cult, and that is very different from everything else I have read from her. But yeah, this is really exciting, and I'm so grateful to have this arc. And then probably my most anticipated release of the entire year, because it's Deacon Fisher, and this is Thornhedge. You know I love everything she does. I love her horror, I love her romance, but there's something about her fairy tale retellings that hold a special place in my heart, and I just love them. and this is like a loose Rapunzel retelling where we're following a main character who, I think, what is this character's name? Toad something. Toadling. And it is this tale of a kind-hearted toad-shaped heroine, a gentle knight, and a mission gone completely sideways. So when Toadling was born, she was stolen by fairies, taken into fairyland, had a really great childhood actually, and then when she's an adult, the fairies ask her to return to the human world and offer a blessing to a newborn child, but obviously everything goes wrong. It is fairies we're talking about, and then centuries later we're following a knight who wants to break a curse, and Toadling will do everything to stop him. So I'm into it. I was denied an arc of this, and that was devastating for me, but I have seen a lot of fantastic reviews for this, and of course I am excited. Next up is Holly Horror. This is a YA horror, and it's a haunted house story. I love a good haunted house story, and this is following a main character who his parents get divorced and she has to move into this house in a new town, and this house is known to be haunted. Holly was a young girl when she just vanished from her bedroom, never to be heard from again, but she's still there. Her presence is definitely still there, and she is haunting our main character. So that just sounds like a good spooky time to me. The cover for Tilly in Technicolor is the cutest thing ever. I am in love with it. This is a YA contemporary romance. This is by Maisie Eddings, who typically has written adult romances, so it's interesting to see that she's dipping her toes into YA, and this takes place in the summer after graduating high school, and these two characters are both doing an internship, and it's enemies to lovers. They don't really understand each other. They're complete opposites, but they are both neurodivergent. She has ADHD and he has autism, and I think they just have like the summer of their lifetime, and they have this internship and they grow to love each other and understand each other even though they're so completely different. So that just sounds really good. I hope we get a lot of traveling stuff. I think they're in Paris for this internship, and I just hope that it's half as cute as the cover, because this covers everything. We have another romance, and it's a really exciting one. This is the companion novel to Battle Royal, which was a foodie romance I read the year it came out and loved. And we met the two characters from this romance in that book, and I have been waiting for their story ever since. So this is a opposites attract romance between Pet and Matthias. They both work for the same royal prince, Johnny. She is Johnny's assistant and he is Johnny's bodyguard, and Matthias feels really protective over Pet because Johnny gets into a lot of trouble, so obviously that puts Pet into precarious situations as well. Then a photo comes out that makes it look like Johnny and Pet are together, and the royal family asks if Pet and Matthias can pretend that they're dating, so they have this fake relationship that obviously turns into more, and that just sounds really sweet. And I hope we get some cameos from the couple from the first book because I love them as well. Moving on to August 22nd, I don't put a lot of cozy mysteries on my list because there are just so many, I can't really keep track of when they come out, but this one really caught my eye and it sounds so good. It's called Bored to Death. It's a board game shop mystery, and this is by CJ Connor, and it's following Ben, who was recently divorced and he had to move back to his hometown to take care of his ailing father, and he has this board game shop. And the board game shop is barely providing them enough money to survive and take care of his father's medical bills, but he's happy enough. He has like a flirtatious relationship with a man who owns a flower shop, so I love that. And then one day a local toy and game collector comes by and offers to let him buy the game that's inspired Monopoly. It's called The Landlord's Game, for a really cheap price, for like 1/10 of what it's worth. And our main character is kind of weirded out by that, doesn't understand why he got such a lowball offer, so he turns him down. Then that collector ends up dead in the bin behind the shop, and there are hundreds of dollar bills on our main character's doorstep, so obviously he's a suspect and they have to find out who did it. We have another book in that classic remix series that I always like, the one that has so many beginnings and what souls are made of. They're all told by different authors, and they take these classics and make them more diverse and YA. And this one is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. It's called Teach the Torches to Burn, and it is a male-male romance between Romeo and somebody named Valentine, who I assume is a Capulet. And I think it follows a lot of the same plot points of Romeo and Juliet, but maybe with a happier ending, because of the ones that I have read in the series, they always seem a little bit more hopeful than the original classics. So I hope that is the case for these two, and it's less of a tragedy than you might expect. Then we have The Water Outlaws by C.L. Wong, which I know so many people are excited about. I love historical fantasy, and this is inspired by classic martial arts literature. And it says the Water Outlaws are bandits of devastating ruthlessness, unseemly femininity, dangerous philosophies, and ungovernable gender who are ready to make history or tear it apart. So our main character is an expert arms instructor, and she just wants to live a simple life, put her head down, do her job. But then a man who has a vendetta against her ruins that for her when she is approached by these bandits and offered a different life. And these bandits proclaim a belief in justice for women, for the downtrodden, for progressive thinkers of a corrupt empire would imprison or destroy. They're also murderers, thieves, smugglers, and cutthroats. Apart, they love like demons and fight like tigers. Together, they could bring down an empire. So that just sounds epic to me. And I just want to mention that the sequel to She Became the Sun does come out August 22nd, and this is He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan. I read the first one. I loved the first half, didn't love the second half, but I'm still curious to see where the second one goes. So I just wanted to put that on your radar in case you didn't know. Moving on to August 29th, and this first one has one of the greatest titles ever, and it's I Feed Her to the Beast, and the Beast is Me. That sounds so good. And this is by Jamieson Shea, and this is a YA horror that is also a villain origin story. And I've said this time and time again, but I love a book that centers around the dark side of ballet. And that is what this is, with this fantastical twist where our main character is always overlooked for parts that she deserves. So she kind of goes down and makes a deal with, it's not a devil, it's a pulsating river of blood, that she will always come out on top. And things start to happen from there, and choices are made, and she has to decide what she wants from her life. So that sounds really good, and I just love things about ballet. I'm a center stage girl. Add the fantasy element, I'm so super intrigued, and that title is everything. We're getting a new book from the author of The Hacienda, and this is Vampires of El Norte. Yes, vampires. I will read anything with vampires. This says vampires and vaqueros face off on the Texas-Mexico border in the supernatural western from the author of The Hacienda. It starts off in 1840 Mexico, and we're following Nina, who is the daughter of a rancher, and she has seen a lot of dark things, but something even darker is coming her way. And it says here that something more sinister lurks near the ranch at night, something that drains men of their blood and leaves them for dead, something that once attacked Nina 9 years ago. And then her best friend growing up believes that Nina died in that attack and has moved away and tried to move on. But then these two reunite again years later at the US-Mexico border. They obviously reconnect, and they need to try and fight to save their lives. So that just sounds fantastic, like everything that I love and I'm looking for in a book. We have another book by one of my favorite authors, and this is Learned by Heart by Emma Donoghue. And what I appreciate about Emma Donoghue is that a lot of her books are based on true stories, and that is certainly the case in this one. It's a heartbreakingly gorgeous novel based on the true story of two girls who fall secretly, deeply, and dangerously in love at a boarding school in the 19th century York. Emma Donoghue did a lot of investigating of the story, and Anna Lister, who is one of the girls, had a secret journal with 5 million words in it that inspired Emma Donoghue to share their story, and apparently it's truly heartbreaking. So I'm ready for it. I trust Emma Donoghue. I know it's going to be heartbreaking but beautiful. I'm just now realizing how much horror is coming out in August, which makes sense. We're getting ready for spooky season. This is Night of the Living Queers. It's edited by Shelley Page and Alex Brown. So each of the stories in this book is written by an author of color, and they are also queer stories, obviously given the title, and they all center around Halloween. So that's all I need to know. If you tell me a book is comparable to Practical Magic, I'm going to want to read it, and that is the case for Tall Dark Trouble. And it says that this is a dazzling YA fantasy about a Cuban-American family of brujas who get entangled in love, magic, and murder, alternating between 1980s Cuba and present-day Miami. And I know that in this family, much like in Practical Magic, all the women in the family are cursed when it comes to love. So they always try not to fall in love because it never ends well. And then the two sisters in this family are starting to have premonitions of murder, and they realize that they have to start using their unleashed magic, and they team up with 2 other people to try and figure out what is going on here. And then we also flash back in time to Cuba, where we're following a different character who is also struggling with their magic, and we see how those 2 timelines parallel each other or come together, and I think it's going to be really, really good. And this cover is really, really cool. Mara Rutherford has another book coming out, and this is called A Multitude of Dreams. And she always has the best covers, doesn't she? This one follows the plague, so it might be a little bit too close to home for some people, but it says, the bloody plague is finally past, but what flesh horrors lies in its wake? And our main character is a princess who has been locked in the castle for all these years to try and survive. And then it follows Nico, who lost everything during the plague, and he is sent into the castle to see if there are any survivors, and he meets a princess and they have a romance. And they will have to navigate the web of lives they've woven if they're going to survive the nightmares that lie ahead. So is this horror? It kind of sounds like it's leaning a little into the horror side, which is interesting. This next one I know a lot of us are excited for. It just looks like a good time. This is My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine, and this follows a woman who's an artist, but she's not making enough to survive, and she sees a listing for a really cheap apartment or room in an apartment, and she's wondering what is happening here. Nobody reasonable would charge this little rent, but she takes it because she's desperate, and she ends up rooming with this man who is really attractive and only sleeps during the day and is awake at night, and they have some great conversations. I think he's really romantic, and he leaves notes for her and stuff, and then one day she opens a fridge and there's blood in there. There's like bags of blood, and he has to tell her who he really is, but they have a romance. It just looks really cute. Okay, I'm all about it. And the last one I have is Together We Rot, and this is a teen girl looking for the truth about her missing mother forms a reluctant alliance with her former best friend in exchange for hiding him from his cult-leading family. So we're following these two people who used to be friends in their childhood, but something happened where her mother is killed and she blames her best friend's family for what happened. He turns 18, he goes out on a night of debauchery, which goes against everything that the cult stands for. And it's then that he learns that he's not meant to be his father's successor, but his father's sacrifice. So he's going to be sacrificed into the woods. These two team up to try and save each other and to figure out what happened to her mother. The final paragraph says, there's a reason they need Elwood's blood for their satanic rituals. Something inhuman is growing inside him. Everywhere he goes, the plants come alive and the forest calls to him, and Will isn't sure if she can save the boy she can't help but love. So, sounds really interesting. And then I just want to point out that there are a few thrillers by really popular authors coming out. I'm not talking about them because you know I'm not really into my thriller phase at the moment. But in case you like these authors, I really wanted to put them on your radar and just remind you that these are coming. So None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, who I actually do really like, and that is getting incredible reviews already. Good Bad Girl by Alice Feeney, Gone Tonight by Sarah Pekkanen, and Dark Corners by Megan Golding, which is a sequel to Night Swim, which I know was really popular. We're getting some YA sequels as well. Never the Hero, which is the sequel to Only a Monster, is coming out. And Foxglove, which is the sequel to Belladonna, is coming out. I own the first books in both of those series. I just haven't read them yet, but in case you have read them and you love them and you were looking for the sequels, those come out as well. So let me know if I missed anything. I would love to know. August is a huge release month. Tons and tons of horror and romance. That seems to be the trend in August, and those are two of my favorite genres. So I am here for it. Once again, thank you for your support. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.